The mixtape all this week features the Gadget Man, our good friend Matt Porter of Matt Porter Web Design, who frequently pops up on our show telling us about the latest technology. Here to choose the tunes this week, now a converted Suffolkian, pretty much. With technology, Matt, you know, when I often think this, when you do like a degree in most professions, that's kind of it. You might have refresher courses from time to time, but that's kind of it. With technology, you're learning every day, aren't you? Such is the speed of change.
You are. When I went to college, my first college course was as a mechanical engineer.
Right.
And I guess most of that information is still taught.
Yeah.
As is, you know, how many tolerances and things like that. Whereas in technology, it's in my time in the tech industry since 1985 has just been mind-blowing, and it's incredibly, for someone who's enthusiastic like me, it's incredibly exciting to see technology marching on relentlessly. You know, it's not, it never seems to reach a plateau where we think, okay, we're happy now.
Just when you think, well, we've got everything we could possibly need. No, we haven't.
We haven't. No. Something else is.
Something else comes along. On that front, I mean, let me ask you this. What do you think is left? I mean, obviously, autonomous vehicles seems to be the goal, and artificial intelligence, and we've spoken about both. Are they the two big goals, or is it something else?
I think that without doubt, automobile technology now has to. Well, I'll say it has to step up. It has stepped up, but it has to now become real mainstream because of the decisions that have been made to cut diesel and petrol cars.
Well, I was shocked hearing the sales figures only recently with Mark on The Breakfast Show. The sales of electric cars are still very low. You know, in the broad scheme of things.
They are. I think that if you look on a country-by-country basis, you'll find that other countries, I think Norway particularly, has got a very, very, very vibrant electric car marketplace because it's encouraged, and
you've probably got charging
infrastructure. Well, this is the argument that lots of people say, is that there isn't the charging points, but there's tens of thousands of charging points around the country.
Yeah,
there's. If you open,
so that's an excuse.
Yeah, I think it is. If you open a map like an app like Zap Map, and
tell you where
zoom
they are.
back, you can't see the country for all the push pins of charging.
So what's holding us back then? Why are we still going for fossil fuel cars?
I think the cost of electric cars is still 25% more expensive than the equivalent petrol diesel, and that's mainly down to the cost of the battery on board, because it's very, very expensive in comparison. So you can't just simply lift out a petrol engine and put in an electric motor. The cost has to go up. That will improve because there are large factories around the world now that have been built specifically for recycling car batteries, lithium-ion batteries, so they will become cleaner, because instead of having to start from scratch the whole time, you can reuse these kind of things. So that's going to the improvement on batteries will bring the cost down.
Phrase that seems to have popped up in 2020, which does sum all of this up: range anxiety.
Range anxiety, yeah. I've been driving electric cars on and off for about 5 years, and I certainly had that when for the first couple of cars that I tried, because they had ranges of 70, 80 miles if you were lucky. Yeah. And to be fair, if you start putting on the stereo air conditioning,
it's going to reduce that dramatically.
But that's because the batteries on them were relatively small. The batteries now on electric cars are becoming much, much bigger. Teslas have very, very big batteries in them, and thus have decent ranges.
Decent range. I mean, they are remarkable cars, those Teslas, aren't they?
But Hyundai have cars with very good range on them now. I drove one recently. It's a couple of 250 miles or something. And most people say, oh, but I can drive my diesel car 500 miles. Yeah. But most people only do about 10 miles a day, and you plug in when you get home.
That you can go to a petrol station or a diesel station and within 2 minutes be on your way. You can't do that with electrics.
Again, that will improve with Tesla lead the marketplace when it comes to charging. When I drove to Scotland and back, it was taking about 15, 20 minutes to charge the car up sufficiently.
Oh, well, that's not too bad.
And I was driving to Scotland. I was stopping and having something to eat.
Oh, wow,
they
that's
were
not
proper
too
rest
bad.
breaks, and
So
that was absolutely fine.
Needs to be education on that, because I think most people assume you have to be on like overnight or something.
There has also been trials of battery swapping, where you drive into
just put a new battery in.
And it pulls the battery out and puts a new one in.
Yeah.
But then there's which takes about the same time. I think that when it was tested, they were able to swap 2 batteries in the time it took to fill an Audi's petrol tank up.
Yeah, that would do. That would do.
But then you have an issue with who owns the battery.
Yes,
because is it someone else's battery? Have they hit something? Have they damaged it? All of those
kind of things. Is it a rubbish battery? Yeah,
but these are not barriers to stop us.
They're not insurmountable.
Yeah,
technology will sort this out.
They'll be, they're.
But autonomous vehicles, people are still very edgy about that.
Well, autonomous vehicles, the technology is still in development. And until we've got this whole argument over who's responsible for an accident, should it occur? Who, if you have this horrible situation where
it has to make a choice,
and things like that. They're all kind of arguments which will, at some point, someone will come up with some kind of resolution. I think that we have to understand that our habits have to change in the next 15 to 20 years anyway.
Well, this is another great question, because is it the case that we now have to... maybe I can flip this round. Whenever there's talk of a wind farm or, you could argue in this part of the world, nuclear power stations, there is this huge... backlash against. Is there going to come a point where we're going to have to say, well, look, we have to make a choice here. We either have, a North Sea that has no wind energy in it, or we do our bit. It strikes me we're going to have to, accommodate some of this stuff against our better wishes, possibly.
I think there's people are concerned over the fact that we're now being told that in 2035 we can no longer buy petrol and diesel cars. I think people have to remember as well is that doesn't mean that on that date we're going to have to stop driving our existing cars and we won't be able to drive them.
But that was always going to happen. We're going to run out anyway, aren't we?
Of course.
That was always going to happen.
But we also have to understand that it is 15 years away and the price of those cars will come down. And also there is an environmental issue here that we can't just simply say, it's too expensive, I can't do it. That the evidence tells us that we have to do it. We have no choice.
And the grid has to step up, of course, the national grid.
I think that renewable energy comes into that new houses being built with tiles which are solar panels. Instead of using standard tiles, you're using tiles which are solar,
right?
Photovoltaic. Yes, solar panels built into your tiles, and therefore we're starting to generate our own electricity, and we have battery storage in our homes, and it's charging while we're not there, so we can then use it in the evening.
Are we not thinking out of the box enough? There is enough light on the road surfaces in this country to power the country a dozen times over. The entire country.
It's just the infrastructure.
It's the infrastructure, isn't it? We know how to do it. We just have to.
We just have to understand that we have to start having.
We've got to have these conversations.
Storage, charge our own, and using. There is plenty of energy out there, and by saying there's not enough charge points at the moment is kind of yes, there's plenty of charge points for the number of cars we currently have, and that will be ramped up. So it'd be interesting. Autonomous cars, yes, again. I think that there'll be a change of what owning a car is about, whether or not we own a car that sits on the drive for 80% of its life and goes nowhere, or we effectively are hailing a shared car that arrives, takes us somewhere, and then goes off and does other things. And that's when the autonomous comes in.
Comes into it, yeah. All right, song choice for this Tuesday, Matt, going with Energy 52. This is Cafe Del Mar. What's that all about?
This is probably one of my favourite pieces of music ever.
Right.
I don't know quite where I first heard it, but it is a very, very, very popular dance track. And I went on holiday with my parents and some friends to Portugal. We had a villa, and I brought this CD that someone had lent me. which was free on the front of a magazine, ministry magazine, Hooj Choons.
Brilliant, yeah.
And I took that with me, and it was a beautiful villa. And I went into the villa and dragged the stereo system out beside the pool and put this on and had it blasting out. There was no one around, but I had it blasting out, sitting by the pool, and it was like being in Ibiza when I was 20. It was fantastic. It's a it's a style of music which is quite uplifting to listen to if you're into that kind of thing. It's called progressive trance, so it builds and builds and builds to kind of like a crescendo. It's a great tune.